Welcome back. The Biden administration has not named its acquisition team yet, but it can get ahead of the acquisition curve with three ideas from a Trump administration leader. Alan Thomas is Chief Operating Officer at IntelliBridge and former Commissioner of the Federal Acquisition Service at GSA. Alan, welcome. Thanks for coming on the program. You're writing about these three ideas, and I think the first one gets at the heart of the nonpartisan nature of acquisition, because something that you teed up and that people from GSA, acquisition leaders of both parties, have been telling me for years. I wish we could get to this, and that's negotiating prices at the task order level. Why is that a big deal, Alan?
So first of all, Happy New Year to you, Francis. Glad to be with you again. So it's a big deal for a couple of reasons. One, I think actually the most important part of it is it's going to save a lot of time for both government contracting officers and for folks in industry. So when you negotiate a master contract like a GWAC or a MAC, a multiple award contract, and establish prices at the master contract level, those prices often don't mean very much, and it's not really useful for the government CO or for industry to spend a lot of time worrying about what those prices are, right? Prices are established at the task order level when there are real requirements and real business on the line. So I think, one, it would be a huge time saver. Two, I think it will drive some additional competition and price competitiveness at that task order level. So that's the two big reasons why that ought to get done. I know you had Emily Murphy on, the GSA administrator, and she said that was one of her big items that she felt like was unfinished business. And I think it's an easy win for the new leaders when they come in to pick up and kind of drive that one home to the finish line.
I'm certainly no acquisition expert like you are, but people that are have told me that they believe that and the schedules consolidation are two things that at least got moved significantly forward. A lot of people thought would never happen. The second idea that you're writing about, Alan, is, and you put it this way: change the conversation on e-commerce to make it more relevant and tie it to the Build Back Better agenda. That's the title that President-elect Biden has attached to what he wants to do. How do you connect those two things effectively, Alan?
So if you remember Section 846 in the 2018 National Defense Authorization Act about purchasing through e-commerce portals, right? There was a lot of buzz around that. Certainly when I was in my role there at GSA, we held a number of industry days. GSA eventually started a pilot. The Air Force has gone off and done some things, right? There was a lot of talk around, is this an Amazon takeover of federal micro purchasing? I think it's been sort of quiet. I think in some ways kind of curiously quiet. I think really, the times have changed, and the sort of the moment idea would be, how do you take that $6 or $7 billion in what's called tail spend in the federal government and really open it up and connect small businesses who are struggling because of the pandemic? How do you connect them into that pool of spend, right? So that feels like it's an opportunity for a little bit of a pivot for the new administration to bring some focus on it. One, it's great for small businesses, and two, it sort of ties into the recovery agenda that I think is going to be really important in the new administration.
What it sounds like you're suggesting there is that we focus less on the mechanism and focus more on the money. Is that what you're getting at?
That's right. I mean, I think initially the play was thought of sort of as a data play, right? Like, let's get all that spend running through some channels that the government can get its arms around, and then figure out how to consolidate that spend. I still think long term that's important, but really now the most important thing, right, is how do you open that spend up to some small businesses who might not have otherwise had access to the government, but it could be a little bit of a lifeline to them, right? And if you think about the innovation that's happening in e-commerce right now, it's happening with folks like Shopify and Google really leveling the playing field, trying to help small businesses not always have to go through some of the big aggregators out there. Could be an exciting place for the government to be. And it also, I think, really lines up well with the sort of Main Street USA agenda that the new administration is going to have.
All right, I want to come back to that if we have time. But the third idea, as you write, is expanding the use of assisted acquisition services for the government's largest and most complex buys. What are you getting at there, Alan?
So if you think about it, Francis, right, for the government's largest and most complex buys, it makes sense to have people who have specific expertise and who get to do those buys a number of times over the course of a year. So oftentimes in-house contracting shops at agencies will only handle some of those big complex buys once every 5 years, right? Assisted acquisition teams at GSA and at other places like at NITAC within NIH handle those kind of buys routinely. And I think ultimately they come up with better acquisition strategies. It's shown that it saves time, right? On average, an assisted acquisition procurement for a big, large buy is about 6 months shorter than an in-house agency buy, and the chance for protest is significantly less once you get to award. My example here, and I mean, this is a hypothetical, so you can't really argue against it. But if you think about the JEDI procurement within DoD, right? My sense is if DoD had started with a team of assisted acquisition experts that were outside the agency and sort of worked with them to refine the requirements and the acquisition strategy, that they'd be in the execution phase right now instead of in court.
Less than a minute left, Alan. I want to go back to e-commerce. What straightens that landscape out for the mechanism? I know you're thinking about the money, rightfully so, but that landscape, despite the efforts of a lot of great people in all over the government, is really kind of at a loss right now.
Yeah, so that's an area where I don't think we don't need any more legislation. I think what we just need is to allow the GSA and the agencies really a little bit of freedom to go out and experiment and kind of try things and see what works. Right? I wouldn't write any new legislation there. It's a fast-moving market, right? So if you think about when that original legislation was created in 2018 to now, there's sort of already been an 18-month innovation cycle there, right? And we're going to fall a little bit further behind if we don't sort of get in the game there. So I'm interested to see what the pilot from GSA yields, and I hope that'll be a focus in 2021. But it just feels like an area where there could be a lot more experimentation, a lot more testing and pilots and things like that. And I'd like to see the new administration sort of pick that up, and again, really with a focus on how to get small businesses into the market and connect them to that tailspin.
Alan Thomas, thanks as always. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Francis.